Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. We just wanted to do a quick intro on this video. Yesterday was the 13-year anniversary of the Sea Diamond cruise ship sinking off of the coast of Santorini in Greece. And Amy had this excellent idea that since we're all stuck in quarantine right now, that I do like a video conference with three of my best friends who were on the ship with me. So we did, and I filmed it, and I thought that it would be really cool to share it with you guys.
It's awesome.
And give you kind of like a first-hand account of what happened and how it all went down. It was interesting because this like kept coming back to how it relates to everything that's going on today with COVID-19 and this pandemic, and just how it's all so surreal and something that you never thought that you would experience. And just kind of seeing like the good, the bad, the ugly, the wonderful, the great, the not so great stuff, and everybody and everything. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and if you do, give it a thumbs up. We welcome all new subscribers.
Oh yeah,
And yeah.
The content. I just watched it, and you want to watch the entire thing. It's so surreal hearing those stories, because when they were talking about it being on the news, I remember this. I remember this cruise ship sinking because I came home from work and my mom was like, "There's some kids from Huntington Beach that were on that ship," and then I marry one.
Yeah.
So.
So if you guys want to look it up, the cruise ship was called the Sea Diamond, and it sank in April of 2007. Oh my God, I had to think about that for a second. So yeah, there's a whole Wikipedia page. There are plenty of photo and video, and if I find some that I think are of interest to the story, I will link those below. Anyway, we hope you guys enjoy it, and yeah.
Hey guys, I'm Emily Moritz.
Hi guys, I'm Nicole Helm.
Hi, I'm Katie Lucho, formerly Wexler.
And you guys know me, I'm Elizabeth. And today basically is the anniversary of 13 years now since our ship sank in Greece while we were on spring break as high school students. It was our junior year, right, Emily and Nicole? And was it your senior year, Katie?
Yeah, it was my senior year. It was with Marina High School, and I was going to Huntington High School at the time.
And so basically that is how I met the three of you guys.
Yeah.
Because the friend that was supposed to go on the trip with me backed out, and the teacher that I knew that was going to go like backed out. And so I was like, well, guess I'm just going to wing it. And then you guys kind of just like took me in basically.
And Elizabeth and Emily and I roomed together while Nicole got to room with other people.
Yep.
You know, I remember Nicole being so mad about that. I was like, I'm sorry.
Right, I made new friends. And actually, had I not roomed with Jessica Moss, we probably wouldn't have known her as well either.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so can we talk about the day that it all started happening? Because we were separated. So like it was me, Katie, and her dad. And then it was you guys with like the rest of the group.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't with the group, remember? I
by
overslept. So I was in the room with Jessica when it happened. And we were sleeping. We slept through all of our alarms. And so then that's when it hit. So I never ended up with the group.
I have kind of a funny like where I was moment. So for whatever reason, everyone in the group decided to use the phone that was in our cabin to call home. So, you know, that was the last day of our cruise, and I wake up to a little bill underneath the door, and it's like, you owe 175 euros for phone bills. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So I was down there trying to talk to them about it.
Yeah.
And I was talking to the guy, and then all of a sudden you hear scraping, like just massive scraping. And he kind of looks and panics, and it's literally, he's hopping on the phone. He's speaking Greek, so I have no idea what he's saying. And I was like, is everything okay? And he's like, yes, everything's fine. Pay me your money. I'm like, oh, okay, let me get this to you. And then we ended up walking down and kind of meeting for our little excursion spot. And then we just saw people running with life jackets. So that was the point when we knew something was happening.
And then I think after that happened, Katie and I went to the desk with her dad.
We were paying our bill.
About the charges, about like what it was exactly, and how if there was any way we could like fix it or whatever. And I remember the same thing. Like I think it was right after the scraping or whatever, and the boat kind of felt like it was kind of tilting, but it did that when it turned, like when we were sailing.
Well, I heard people screaming, and my dad and I were like we just thought it was play fighting because we heard these two girls screaming and they were like in their bathing suits and they were like running.
By the elevator, right?
Yeah, and they were running, and then all of a sudden, I just remember my dad, you and I, we all ran upstairs, and then back downstairs, and then up again, and then back down because there was just and then we got out and got our life jackets, and that was the first thing I said was like, we just need to grab jackets because, who knows if there's going to be enough. I mean, we watched Titanic. We all know.
And I remember like walking around the corner by those elevators with your dad and all of a sudden just seeing everybody running up with life vests on.
Yeah.
And so he was like, okay, go up. Wait, go down. Go up.
Yeah.
Finally, we were on like one of the upper decks and we walked out and we didn't know where to get life vests. Like we weren't paying attention. And so I remember your dad lifting up the bench.
Yeah.
And like he realized, he's like, oh yeah, I remember, or whatever. He must have paid attention. And he like lifted up the bench and there were life vests and he just started like throwing them out to people. And that was like how we got our life vests.
Yeah.
I remember that like distinctively. And then I remember that because it was you and I and your dad, we were separated from like everybody else, but we could see them up above us because there's that one picture. And I think I have it on my Facebook, so I'll share it. And it was like you, me, and Jessica Moss was with us now at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, okay, women and children first.
Yeah, they separated me
from your dad, and you like lost it. And
I was upset because I was just like, well, we're all underage. We don't, we have nobody really directing us. My dad's gonna make sure we're all the safest that we can possibly be. And he's a doctor, so I'd rather be with him than anybody else. Of course, I want to be with you girls, but. I definitely wanted to stay with him, and that was really hard.
I remember when it hit, Jessica and I were still in bed taking a nap, and you're right, Emily, it sounded like scraping metal, and it felt almost like an earthquake, but like growing up on boats, I'm used to when boats turn, it can kind of shake and feel a little bit like an earthquake. And so I remember her turning to me and instantly being like, is that bad? Is it okay? Are we okay? And I said, yeah, no, it's going to be fine. And I knew something was wrong, but I didn't want to say anything. So I was trying to stay calm. And then that was when it like dropped, when we started listing. And we went from like looking out the window at the horizon to like looking down at water. And she looked at me and was like, what do we do? I was like, get your life vest. We're going. Like, we have to get out of here. So we ran out of the room. And I just remember being in the hallway and the cleaning crew had their cart with like all the supplies. And it came flying down the hall because we were tilted so much. And there was a man running around in his towel yelling like, we're all going to die. We're all going to die. And I was trying to keep her calm, but she and I both were like, where do we go? What do? We missed the group. We don't know where to meet them now. And so we started to head down. We got out to the main lobby and we were running down the stairs and this man grabbed me and grabbed my life vest. Like he was going to take it away from me. And so I was kind of like fighting with the guy to keep my life vest. He took it. I turned around and she was gone. And I couldn't find her anywhere. And she had at that point made it down to the group and like met up with you guys. But I stood up on the 8th deck by myself until one of the chaperones found me. I would say like an hour or so later. I was just kind of standing in a crowd of people crying.
It was just Elizabeth, Jessica, and I, because my dad took the picture from I think he's the one that took the picture from above.
Yeah.
He ended up being above of us because they separated him. Mm-hmm. So at that point, Nicole, I think everybody else, Emily, who are you with?
So I ended up getting off the ship with Jessica Malco. But besides that, we were with the group and then they started separating us. So they pulled the two of us. They're like, hey, we have a boat for you. Like, let's go. Because prior to that moment, they had no idea what they were doing. Like, I hate to say it, but it was kind of a cluster. Like, they didn't have any direction for us. You could tell that they were just as scared as we were. And they weren't trained for it. So it took a really long time, I feel like, for us to get direction. So there was a good 45 minutes there where it was scary. Like, there was groups of us that were standing and like holding hands and praying because.
And there was no alarm. I mean, it took forever for the alarms to going off, and there were so many people around us, people speaking in different languages, a lot of people that didn't even have any, like, there was no what's the word,
like direction,
or even the people that were foreign, they had no one that was able to communicate with them, letting them know what's going on.
Like interpreters or translators.
Yes, interpreters. Thank you.
When,
Well, then I just remember after a while, an announcement came on, and like they said the boat was listing, but that they thought that they could level it out if we all moved to one side of the boat. Do you guys remember that?
I remember that.
And so everyone started pushing to one side of the boat, but that did nothing. And so we all just stood there waiting, hoping that it was going to change something, and just waiting for direction because nobody knew what to do.
There are pictures too of people like in the hallways during like waiting, and the boat is like so far to one side. They look like they're leaning like against the wall, but they were standing straight, and it's like how slanted the boat was.
Oh yeah, I remember.
And then I do remember like you, Emily, were with the group that got off like fairly quickly. And Katie, Jessica, and I were literally on the last boat that got off. So by that point, it had been like 3 or 4 hours, I want to say. And they didn't have control. They didn't have control over the boat. So I remember, Domino, come here, Bubba.
Glad I'm not the only one who has dogs barking.
When the boys are outside, so she really wants to be out there. Like when they're riding bikes and stuff, she's all protective. Domino, come here. Come here, Bubba. So at one point, like they had completely lost power and control of the ship, I remember. And they were trying to like figure out how to maneuver it or get it to even like stay. And it hit the side of the rocks. Do you guys remember that? And they were just like, hold on to something, hold on to whatever.
Right there, Elizabeth, we were right at that rock.
We were right there, yeah. And then it hit, and they had already lowered the lifeboats on that side. So half of them were just rendered useless. So then they were trying to figure out how to get us off. And I remember, do you remember, Katie? Like, okay, so when you're getting on a cruise ship, you know, it's like in the middle. So it's not like on the lower or upper deck. It's like right in the middle. So they opened that where there usually would be stairs to get off onto the land. And they made like a makeshift plank that we had to crawl across. And then they had a boat that they had laid mattresses down. So we had to crawl across this freaking plank and then slide down these mattresses onto a boat to like.
There was actually many different forms of getting off. There were people getting helicoptered off. There were people that were getting off onto larger boats. There were people getting off onto the mattresses. I mean, if you looked around, it was just like so much chaos. It was not like one form of getting off. It was just like, we need to get these people off now.
I literally, the way that I got off the boat, and like you said, we were lucky, like we got off like fairly quickly, but even at that point, they had grabbed me, Jessica, and there was this other sweet lady who spoke no English. She got separated from her husband. So she grabbed our hand. She was literally holding our hand the entire time because they started taking us down. Like we were going down the ship to try to get to where we could get off. And we were like completely, like you were saying before, like we were standing straight, but we were like this.
Yeah.
There was like no power. Like it was extra dramatic, but
They took you guys down. Was there water on the floor?
There was water on the floor.
Elizabeth, I thought we went down too.
We had to go to the opposite side of the ship.
Yeah.
It was all
dark.
And there was water on the floor, so it was obvious, like that's how high the water had come up. Like,
I was lucky. I was on one of the first lifeboats, I think, too, and we had like it was only women and children at that point. They took us off.
Hey, guys,
hold on.
guys.
I just remember the chaperone that I was with was male, and they were only letting women and children off, and so he had to argue with them and like plead with them because I was underage, and so they finally let him on. We got on the lifeboat, and it was all women and children. There were a lot of kids, and so they were singing "Row, row, row your boat." And they lowered us down, and they lost control at one point. And so the boat, we were probably 15 feet above water at that point, and then just dropped and hit the top of the water. And then they had fishing boats that were like hanging out outside of the boat that came up to us, and we got loaded onto the fishing boats and taken into harbor. So while the boat hit the side of the island, when you guys were still on it, I was on shore at that point watching from the sand. But I remember thinking, where were you guys? And, you know, if you were still on there, and I had no idea where any of you were at that point.
And I was, you know, I climbed down a rope ladder down the side of the ship. I got into this sweet, sweet Greek man's fisherman's boat who came in. And I was like, we were actually towing to shore when the boat hit. So Nicole was one of the first people that I saw when we finally reached land. And it was right after the boat had hit. And we didn't know like who was on there still. But yeah, I'll like never forget that moment because it was right when we pulled up. Nicole was searching in the boats to try to find us, and literally her and I screamed because we saw each other and we'd been separated the whole time. And I'll never ever forget the feeling of that moment because, you know,
So
you knew
how
one
far
friend-
off do you guys think the boat was by the time that we were getting off from shore? Like a mile, 2 miles?
No, it wasn't that far.
No.
Because I remember seeing the group from the boat and screaming Jessica's name, and you guys all heard me.
Yeah, I don't think we were that far because I remember you like spotted the group and we could see them, and you guys were like sitting on the ground, like.
But it was like they weren't that close. They still, like, you couldn't tell who was who, just kind of by the body.
Right. Well, and I know when I got off, we were further from shore because I felt like I was in the fishing boat for a long time. And I think when we hit, wasn't it like close to like a mile from shore?
I want to say a mile.
We were coming into port, like we were getting ready to meet up with everybody to go ride freaking donkeys.
Yeah.
So another thing is, I remember we were wearing like our crappiest clothes because we were gonna.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was the last day of the trip. Everything was all, it was
Yeah.
like, it was the last day.
It was the last day of the cruise, right?
Yeah.
Like
I literally had
a few more
nothing.
days. We were
I had nothing of my own on.
She had all my clothes on.
I had all of Katie's, like I had borrowed Katie's clothes.
I was like, yes, I get 2 like clothes coming home with me.
Well, I'll never forget I had that red sweatshirt from Olvera Street that I wore for like 3/4 of the freaking trip. That was the only thing.
Poncho.
Yeah,
Uh,
my poncho.
I still have these awesome photos when we're in Turkey, and Nicole has her red poncho for them.
I just like that whole experience, and then finally getting off the boat felt like it was almost just the beginning of everything.
Oh, yeah.
And we were stuck on Santorini for hours and hours and hours until they were able to get another boat out to
No
us.
food, nothing.
No food, nothing. And then they were handing out like random shit as we were walking through. Like I still have a rain jacket, like a windbreaker that says Santorini on it that one of the
No
shops
way.
handed to me, which I probably could go get, but I don't remember where it is. And then I remember like we were in the port on the opposite side of the island, literally like sleeping on the ground or trying to sleep on the ground until the
I thought we went to dinner.
no.
That was later in the night, but that
Yeah.
was hours later.
Oh, yeah. Like, finally, like 7 hours later, they're like, we're going to bring you dinner. And I remember falling asleep basically in my dinner plate because of how exhausted I was.
Yeah. And then I also remember when we were finally getting onto the new cruise ship that they had sent to us, which
The dirty cruise boat.
it smelled like freaking
Fish.
fish throughout. It was
Oh,
disgusting.
it was a dirty cruise boat.
They were
had just
handing
let
it
people
every
off.
single person. They were handing every single person a bottle of wine.
Yes.
You guys
Yeah,
are-
I know, that was like the highlight of the whole experience for me at 16.
A bottle of
A
wine.
bottle of wine and like, go have fun.
Yeah,
I remember when they handed us the bottles, we looked at each other like, are we allowed to have this?
I know. We're like,
Yes, take it.
I'm pretty sure that by that point, none of the teachers or chaperones gave a shit
No.
anymore. They were just like, go ahead. Go ahead. And like, then going and being on that ship, and like most of us just going to sleep, except I remember we got our toothbrush. They gave us a toothbrush, an envelope with 300 euros, a bottle of wine, and that was like all of our belongings that we had besides whatever we had with us. Like I lost my camera. I remember I lost like a stuffed animal that I'd had since I was born, basically, like a bunch of random stuff, my class ring, whatever. But I remember that's all we had was whatever they gave to us and whatever we had in whatever bag that we
The
were.
toothbrush.
Yeah, so we got our toothbrushes and we put it in the safe.
Put it in the
Like, oh,
safe.
we must protect our belongings.
Yeah.
All your belongings.
Our prized possession.
Yes.
And like I remember the conversation of that whole evening, the whole kind of waiting time that we were there was like, well, how are we going to get our stuff? They'll probably go and stick it in trash bags and then they'll like mail it to us, or we'll have to claim it, whatever, we'll figure it out. Like I remember everyone was talking about it. So we get on the other cruise ship, put our toothbrushes in the safe. And at one point, Emily and I put our life vests on and walked out into the hallway. And there was a lady out there that looked at us like scared. We're like, oh, no, we're just kidding.
Like,
This
it's good.
is fine.
We're like too soon. Too soon.
Yeah, way too soon. We were like, 16 at the time. And I remember we woke up the next morning and we get to breakfast and the teachers were like, well, we want you to hear it from us first, but the ship capsized and sank last night.
Yeah.
And that just felt like the final like
Yeah.
trigger in the open wound. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and
I
then,
remember coming out of, because we've been sitting in the dock house on the island for a while, and when we were like making our way to the new cruise ship going by and like seeing, you could just see the shadow of a little bit of a boat left, and it was like this terrifying feeling of, okay, wait, we were on that.
Yeah.
You know,
I remember at
and
one
it was
point,
just half.
it was like up on the rocks. Do you guys
Yeah.
remember that? Seeing it like that? It was crazy.
It literally went everywhere in that harbor.
We had no control over it. It was just
Yeah.
in
It
that
was just floating. Yeah.
arena or whatever, just kind of like, you know. Yeah.
Do you guys have like one item that you wish you could have gotten back from?
I definitely do.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember I had those like little diamond butterfly earrings that my grandpa had given me. And that was the one thing, because my grandpa died, not before the trip happened, but years later, I still look back like that was my one sentimental thing that I loved that he had given me. But other than that, my mom wishes I hadn't taken her Chanel sunglasses with me on the trip because I lost those. But but no, I was lucky because I was in the room. I was able to grab my purse. So I still had my camera and my cell phone, which I know most of you guys didn't, right? The rest of you.
I had my cell phone, I remember.
I had my little backpack because we were getting ready to go on the excursion. So I had my camera and my cell phone in my wallet, and that was pretty much it. Yeah, but everything else.
I had left my camera on the charger to go settle the bill thing, and then I was like, oh, I'll run back to the room and pick it up, and then I just never got the chance to. So all the photos I had taken on the trip were just like,
I honestly had nothing important. Like everything was just clothes, makeup, nothing of an importance. The only thing that was really sweet with my dad had bought a bunch of beautiful jewelry for my mom and for me and my sister, and he had spent a lot of money, and even though money's nothing really, it just was like kind of sad because I never got to see any of those pieces. It was all a surprise, you know, but that stuff really doesn't matter. It's just I would have liked to see at least what he had picked out, you know.
Yeah, I think for me, I can't even really remember much that I had on there. Like obviously I remember going and buying like all new clothes for the trip because, you know, it was this big international trip. But I think the thing that I probably wish the most that I walked off with were our little Greek slippers that we had all purchased. I still miss those. Like I just wish I had them.
Nicole, you got a carpet sent to
Oh
you.
yeah, I had like a little tiny Turkish rug. That's all I could afford was like
oh
this.
my God, I remember that. That was nice.
I love so much.
$300.
I love so much that 17-year-old Nicole bought a Turkish rug.
Yeah.
You were in there for quite a long time.
I know.
Showing you all of them, and you were like, okay, and it was just like such a like, you know, interior designer like thing to do. It was so cute.
I mean, it's very fitting that she's now an interior designer.
Yeah.
I have the ring that I bought when we were in Turkey, and we bought jewelry, Emily.
Mhm.
I still have that. That was like the one thing I was wearing. But there are two things that I was like pretty upset about losing. One was like
Off boot.
real thing. Doc
That's
boot.
food.
One thing was my class ring
Mhm.
that like I had just got like maybe a month or two before, and I remember my mom like treated me to getting real diamonds in it.
Oh,
I remember she was like really upset because it was like $600 or $800 or something like that. But
Did
like,
you never reach out to them, seeing if they would replace it?
they offered to replace it at half the cost, but I would have had to pay for it, and I didn't want to spend my money on that at the time. But the one thing that like breaks my heart and absolutely crushes me is that stuffed animal that I'd had since I was born. That is like gone forever. And like I remember one Christmas, my aunt had apparently like, because the eyes would always fall off and like pieces of it would always fall off, and my grandma or my dad or whoever would like sew it back on. And apparently my aunt had kept a little piece of it that had fallen off, and she meant to give it back to me to sew on. And so it was like the Christmas after that happened, she still had that piece, and she like put it in like a locket, like a big like
Aw.
wallet. Oh my God, I would cry like even thinking about it. So I have one tiny little piece of it in a random necklace that my aunt had, but like that's one of those like things that you can't replace, just like those earrings, Nicole, because your grandfather gave them to you, you know.
Yeah.
It's like much more sentimental than like
Yeah.
a realistic thing. But
I think we all so much were like trying to hold on to like something during all of that. And I know the big joke afterwards, I still can't believe we could joke about it, but I had clip-on hair extensions that I went down with the ship. And I think we all like really held on to that because that was the big joke. Like, oh, there's dolphins swimming in the ocean right now.
Your extension.
Clip-on hair extension.
I remember us all joking about that.
on that note, did you guys lose anything like weird or random like that like the clip-on hair extensions. Like something random for me that I lost was Netflix used to mail out the DVDs. Do you remember that?
Oh,
Yeah.
So you would go online and you could pick 3 movies and they would mail it to you. And then you like created a list, right? And then when you mailed the other one back, they send you a new one. Well, I had taken one of our Netflix movies, like a DVD, because I had a portable DVD player with me on the trip. And it freaking sank, right? So my mom's like, oh, well, we'll reach out to Netflix and I'm sure that they'll understand. Like it was all over the news and everything. Like it was a big deal. Those motherfuckers still charge me $50 for a DVD that is at the bottom of the freaking Mediterranean. I was like, seriously?
Be ever.
And I'm like, I could buy you a brand new movie, that exact same movie for less than that. And they
$50 seems excessive.
What I'm looking forward to is, well, if they're able to now, is if they're going to raise the ship, because that was something that they were in the talks of, because it was, you know, destroying the living animals in the ocean there. And so we'll see if they actually raise it, because I want to know what our stuff looks like, not like our personal stuff, but just any stuff.
The day after it sank, there were looters in the ship. So who knows what's still in there and what was taken, too.
I really hope that they do pull it up, because I had this really beautiful diamond necklace. it was heart shaped. It was. And I always promised I would never let it go. But clearly. I left Leo on there too, but I don't know.
No, I think my weirdest thing was my little rug. I wonder if like a looter came by it and was like, what the hell? Somebody
pull it out and just like, what is this? Keep looking.
I just remember coming home and having, you know, to go back to school and having none of my favorite clothes.
Yeah.
Like I had all the clothes that I don't wear, which is fine. It's not a big deal, but it was just like, I would look for the shirt or the jeans that I usually wear, and it was just like, oh yeah, they're at the bottom of the sea. Like I can't wear these. And so I just remember my mom taking me shopping, and it was just like nothing could compare to those items.
I can like distinctively remember, like, I feel like every moment, you know, while it was happening, like being on that island back on the cruise ship, like I feel like we all we had our moments, but we kind of held it together. And I know for me personally, it literally didn't hit me what had happened until we were back in Athens, and I got to call home. And I can remember I talked to my parents. I kind of kept it together. And then I can remember my brother Jeff got on the phone, and that was the point where I, like, every single moment that happened, you know, up until then just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like it was like my emotional waterfall after everything, and it just that was the moment when it all became real.
Yeah.
Of what we went through.
That was the same for me. It wasn't until I remember we were in your room, Emily, and again, we were all using your phone again.
I know.
And,
y'all owe me some money for some phone.
I did not use your phone.
I had my cell phone. I was using my cell phone. So.
Yeah. You had your flip. What was your little
sidekick?
Yeah.
Finally calling my parents, because you guys were the ones, I think everyone else had already called, and you kept saying, Nicole, are you going to call your parents? And so I finally did. And they were both freaking out because it had been a day or two at that point, and they had all gotten the call from the State Department and then the principal of the school, and they were waiting for me to make the call, and I hadn't actually called them to tell them that.
So bad.
So that was when it hit me too, because it wasn't until I like heard their voice and they asked me if I was okay that it like hit, like, oh, actually, I guess we did just have something crazy happen to us. It was like the adrenaline finally wore off.
Yeah. My dad was actually in Ireland at the time for a work trip, and he was sitting at the airport getting ready to board his flight, and all of a sudden, like in the corner of his eye, he sees the news, and it's talking about a cruise ship sinking in Greece. And he knew we were like in Santorini at the time, but he of course didn't know yet. And they hadn't gotten the embassy call or anything at that point. So my dad had to get on like a 17-hour flight without knowing whether or not, you know, we were okay, if it was our cruise ship, in fact.
So funny, like I said, I had my awesome, really cool sidekick with me. As soon as we crawled across that plank and slid down the mattresses onto that other boat, like as the boat was sinking, my dad is calling me on my phone, right? So I answer it. I'm like, hey, Dad. Because I think like while we were up there and going through everything on the boat, I had texted my mom, my dad, and like maybe 2 other friends, like, hey, love
You
you.
used your phone. I called my mom.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember. And I remember we were standing there and we're like, if we need to jump off of the boat and swim, the water's not going to be cold. And we had like a meeting point, like us and your dad. I remember that. But so we got off and we were on this other boat finally. And my dad calls and I answer and I was like, hey, Dad. And he's like, hey, how's it going? And I'm like, do you want to hear something funny? Like, yeah, what? And I'm like, our ship is sinking. And he's like, that's not funny. Are you kidding? Are you serious? And I remember like I was the one that broke the news to him. And then right after I got off the phone with him, I called my mom. And I guess right before I called her, she was listening to the message from the school from Miss Geck, like Rosie Geck, one of the Spanish teachers, about how the ship was sinking and that we were getting off the boat and like all this stuff. So they didn't even know like what the status of it was, but she was just updating them that we were a part of that cruise ship sinking. So I'm calling and my mom literally answers the phone. Elizabeth, are you okay? And I was like, whoa, what's going on? Yeah, I think so. Kind of. And she's like, I just got the message. What is happening? Is this serious? Like, and I told her, I was like, yeah, I just got off the ship. It's sinking. Like, this is really happening. So like I had talked to my parents in that moment where it was still kind of like happening and my adrenaline was rushing. And then I didn't think about it again really until we got home and we were in the airport and we got off and we like went through customs and everything. And I saw my mom in the airport and I just like lost it. And I think that there was a portion on the news on like KTLA of me running and like hugging my mom. And I remember there were cameras and stuff. And I just like hid my face because I was just like bawling. Like that for me, that was the first time I like cried about it, thought about it, anything.
Some people actually had called when we were in the hotel room still in Athens, and there were reporters that were on the other line of the phone calls and like not talking to anyone, like until I see my family, like my mom, my brother, my sister, like maybe I'll talk to someone. And then I decided I didn't want to be on the news at all.
There were like a couple random kids that like answered to the reporters.
Yeah.
We didn't realize how huge of a deal it was till we got to the hotel in Athens and somebody logged onto the computer and it was like the front of Yahoo News, which was like a big thing back then. It was like the very front big story. And we're like, oh wow, crazy. And then like I said, there were reporters at the airport when we landed. Like I think we were too young to really grasp how serious it was.
I think you're right. I think I remember when we were lining up to like come out the gate and they were telling us that there would be reporters there and just warning us if we wanted to talk to them. And we kept saying, what if we don't want to talk to them because we haven't showered in 3 days and we really don't want to have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
They were saying, keep your heads down.
Yeah.
But I remember walking out and just seeing all these cameras and people with like signs. I don't remember if
And people were throwing like little lifesavers. Do you guys remember that? Like
oh yeah, I totally remember that.
I remember that being like the first moment that I like broke down and like cried because the second you saw your parents, it was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Your comfort was there. So it was like, okay.
Yeah.
You finally felt okay to be like vulnerable and
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. I think we all used kind of like the more let's like joke about this, to get through it up until that point.
that was our coping mechanism.
That was our coping mechanism.
Definitely.
Like I can't even believe the night that it had happened and we finally get onto that cruise ship and we're all like, I think we were deliriously tired at that point too. And we're like putting on the life vest, so putting our toothbrushes in the safe and like laughing and like some people even went out like because the boat, like everything was free on the boat, all the drinks, all the food, whatever you wanted. And I just was like, how did we not just freaking I feel like if it happened to me now as an adult, I would have had a completely different reaction. Like I probably would have reacted in the moment, but like then it's just like I don't know if we were old enough to really be able to cope with what was happening.
Now, like 13 years later and being a parent, I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, I would have reacted so different.
I have a question. Has anyone been on a cruise since?
Yeah.
Kind of. We went on the Catalina Flyer.
Yeah.
Not really.
I have a terrible track record with boats.
Yeah.
This actually isn't my first incident on a boat, and it may not be the last. God, I hope not. But I haven't been on a cruise since. Not really that I'm like scared. It's just not my favorite way to travel.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and everything that's going on now with like the pandemic and stuff is like basically they're big cesspools of germs and it's just like an incubator. But Amy and I did go with some friends on a 3-day Mexico cruise. And
How was that for you?
I mean, it was fine. I joke like, what are the odds of that happening to you once in your lifetime?
Let
It's
alone
got to be completely impossible for it to happen twice.
Well,
And I
that's the
remember, like,
thing,
I'm
right?
a very nervous flyer. And I remember when we were on the flight coming home from that trip, I was like eerily calm. And I think in my head, it was the same thing. Like, after what we've just been through, there's no way that anything else could like happen like this at this level. I know it's absolutely possible, but I think like that made me feel better. Like knowing that, okay, I've already been through this. How could it happen again? If it happens again, I'm writing a freaking book or something about it because that's just like insane.
I
That's the joke
legitimately,
in my
when
family
we
too.
got back, thought we were like going to be on Oprah. Like I was waiting. Like I was like waiting for the call from Gail. Like, hey,
There were kids on talk shows. Remember the freaking kids from Virginia or some shit were like on the news or a talk show or something. Do you guys remember that? Like there was a group that ended up being on a show talking about it. I don't know if it was the news or a talk show or what, but I remember like they were interviewing.
You guys remember I kept having like nightmares for
Yeah.
weeks before about that we were going to be on a sinking cruise ship. And my dad kept telling me like, it's a 1 in a million chance. It's a 1 in a million chance. It's never going to happen. Like this never happens. And then it did. And the first thing he said to me when we ran into him at the airport was like, well, good news. It's like a 1 in a billion or trillion chance that it'll ever happen to you again in your lifetime. So you can get on any boat or any plane and just feel fine.
That's kind of like how I look at it.
Yeah.
But, let's talk about this picture.
Yay!
Emily, we laughed about this forever. A fantastic voyage.
We all were singing Blow the Whistle and blowing into those disgustingly dirty life vests. Do you guys
And
remember?
I think Emily might be yelling like, Jack, I'll never let go. I'll never let go. I'm pretty sure that's what you were yelling. We were just like,
we took that very seriously.
That picture is gold.
It is.
oh my God, I have braces. This is so funny. You can hardly see it, but like, that's great.
Oh, my hair extensions. It's funny because even like looking back now, like I just think of it as an experience. And when I think about Greece, like that's not even the first thing that I think about, you know, like I think about, you know, our memories. I'm sure you guys can share some of our favorite memories, especially Mykonos memories. But that's kind of that's what I think about when I think about that trip.
I think that is what really like solidified our friendships too.
No, there were lots of good things that came from the trip too, and a lot of great memories. And I think we all got a lot closer. Yeah.
Did you go through something like that that's like so traumatic, and we're lucky that it brought us closer? Because I think that that's something that you got to hold on to in those times. And I think it's important in times like now when we're going through this pandemic and we're all kind of like feeling so isolated and secluded. Like you got to find those silver linings and try to find the good in the bad, you know?
With this situation, we saw both sides of people, the people that went crazy and the people that, you know, stole life vests or tried to put their, you know, strollers on a lifeboat instead of their family.
Mhm.
But then there were also the wonderful people of like Santorini that came out and gave out water bottles and blankets and bread, and the other people that were handing out life vests to the elderly and to children and things. So it kind of brings everyone together. And yes, there's definitely crazies, but I think that the majority of the people were really wonderful and kind. And so I keep thinking about that with the current pandemic. They're like, okay, the majority of the people out there are kind, good people. And we have to just keep remembering that, and that we're in this together no matter what.
And I love that because like you can only control yourself and what you do. So I think that is something that's so important to remember, that even if there are people that are going crazy or panicking or making selfish decisions, that you can still control you. And that's going to have an opposite effect and like a counter effect of you spreading kindness and being positive. It's going to like cause this ripple of positivity and, you know, happiness in a time like this. So I think it's important.
I think all of us definitely like took that. Like I think to the core, I know all of you ladies are such kind, compassionate people. You know, and everyone's relatively calm. You know, I think that we all handle stress pretty well. Of course, we all have our moments, but I think the ship probably cultivated a lot of that as
Changed all of
I
us.
really think,
Definitely.
you know.
Yeah. I know we've talked about this before, but like things that have changed since the trip, like going into, for me, I know going into like a crowded space, I instantly start looking for emergency exits now.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And I think that's totally changed from being on the cruise ship, of like going through situations like that. I now take, especially when I'm on flights and they're going through the whole emergency protocol, I take it so much more seriously than I did before. Because as we joked earlier, we didn't take it seriously at all. And when it came down to it, we had no idea what we were doing or where we were supposed to go. So I definitely take it more seriously now. But do any of you get that way? Do you freak out in crowds?
We had a 3-alarm fire at my building 2 years ago, and definitely the first thing I did was I told my husband all the things we needed to grab, passport, ID. I mean, we had like a little bag packed when we went out. Nobody else had anything. And I was like, people weren't able to get hotels. And so for me, that experience kind of taught me to be a little bit more prepared if I can be. I mean, some people aren't that lucky, some people were in the shower, for me, it just made me a little bit more aware of my surroundings. We need a game plan. If anything gets crazy, we have a way of making sure we are safe. And so that's something that I take pride in myself. And everyone else may not love it who's with me, because I'm like, all right, here's the game plan. We're going to be, this exit, and we're going to meet at this restaurant. And my husband and I do that all the time, but I take pride in it,
I think for me, one thing that kind of happened, and I didn't even realize this until recently. We were all together. I think it was in October or something. And we all kind of started talking about how all of us have a little bit of residual anxiety. And I don't know why it never hit me that it did start around that time. Like that's when it all kind of cultivated, and I never really put it together. But I think I definitely have some anxiety from all of that happening.
So for me, that actually triggered like PTSD for me that I had to seek therapy for. And I remember it was like extremely hard at first. I started getting like debilitating migraines and panic attacks, and I couldn't eat and I couldn't sleep. Like I remember having to sleep in my mom's bed, literally, like after this stuff happened for quite a while. And then they were trying different like meds with me and like different antidepressants and things that were just kind of like messing with me. But eventually it did. Like therapy helped tremendously. Figuring out my anxiety helped tremendously. But this also helped me come out and like feel more like myself. Like I remember going through the PTSD and like having a moment where I was like, how can I, like, life can be taken away so quickly. Things can happen that you don't expect. How can I, like, live and die not being my authentic self and, like, feel good about it? So I remember that is what really, like, helped me come to terms with, hey, I'm gay and I'm going to come out and I'm going to be me. Because if I'm not, like, I'm just going to die, like, nothing. Like, it's not a way to live,
I'm so proud of you for being able to take that experience and make it something worth it for you,
Thank you. Yeah, it was like a big deal. Like it just was like I don't know. It sucked. It got worse before it got better, but it definitely did get better.
I can still remember, like, it was only I would say it was that summer, like probably June or July. You came out pretty quickly after all of it. And I remember we had gone to your house, your mom's house, and you were having like a little party. And like right when we walked in, you like pulled Nicole and I, and you're like, hey, I'm lesbian. And we're like, no. We're going out. We're like, we love you. Great.
Yeah. Well, and at first, I was like, wait, what? Okay. I mean, I guess okay, that makes sense. It like it took a second, but it just.
The amount of Tegan and Sarah she listened to.
I mean, hello. It's funny. Everybody was like, oh, like everyone kind of had a similar reaction. Really? Oh, wait. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I remember I told a lot of you guys first before I like came out. But I just thought like, I think it was right after graduation where I like officially like was out to the world, like on my MySpace all over, when like MySpace was a thing, Facebook, whatever. I'm not going to stay friends with the majority of these people that we go to high school with. Why would I give them all the chance to judge me simply for being who I am and like give me shit or make my life harder,
And that's pretty mature for a high schooler.
Yeah.
I guess I've always had an old soul, which explains why I'm married to my cougar wifey.
I think we're all kind of old souls. I think that's why we're all connected.
Agreed.
Because my husband and I have the same age gap that Amy and you have. And Nicole, your age gap is what?
6 years.
6 years.
Okay, so see, there's still, yeah. And Amy and I both think that Emily is going to find her partner in an older person.
Yeah.
So this is a dating. Let's get Emily.
Welcome to Cruise Ship Sink and Single.
Naked single. Oh my god. Oh, anyone wants to holler at Emily.
Yeah.
Hello, like
I'll write my number down below. I promise I don't normally always look like this, but
you look
single, ready to mingle.
She just cooked and cleaned, and now she's gardening. She's the perfect woman.
You know what? I painted the house. I cooked dinner. I mean, wife me up, people.
Is there anything else that like anybody wants to share or
I feel like everyone needs to share their favorite happy memory from the trip. I mean, who wants to tell the Mykonos story? Because someone.
Emily me? No, Emily told the Mykonos story.
Okay, tell the Mykonos.
It's her story to tell, I feel like.
This may not make the cut, but I mean, so our very first island that we went to was Mykonos, and you know, we're our little high school girls walking around the island, and the way that, you know, they would get you to come to their restaurants there is they're standing outside and like actively trying to get you, you know, to come in. And all of a sudden there's a Greek man and he is holding a lobster in his hand, you know, like a live lobster. Yeah, a live lobster. And all we hear is, "Oh, you're so beautiful." And he like comes up to me, this like blonde girl from California.
Well, you need to note that you're like really tall and have long legs.
She's like 5'11",
platinum blonde hair, which is like
beautiful.
Very often.
Right. I mean, you know, I'm like dime a dozen in California, but I was like an exotic queen.
Yes. Not just this man. Everybody stared at you.
Yes.
So this Greek man, you know, he starts coming up to me and talking to me. He then proceeds to ask 17-year-old me. He was like, "Oh, can I pay to have sex with you?" And I'm pretty sure I was like speechless and I couldn't say anything.
Yeah.
We were walking like arm in arm, and you were like, "Run, run, run!"
Get away.
We just walked away really fast.
But I think we still say that quote every time we're together. So.
Yes.
It was sex.
I think one of my favorite memories is when we were all drinking trays of ouzo. Now, granted, we were 16 and 17. And it was literally like a cake or like a oven tray of just like shots of ouzo. And they were like, ladies. And they brought us in for free. And there's all these drunk men dancing in the street and we're just taking shots of ouzo.
Well, what was funny is the ouzo shots were supposed to be for everyone. But just, you know, the 5 of us were sitting at a table and we took all of the like, whatever, 26 shots or whatever.
That was such a fun day. That was the day we bought those slippers.
Yeah.
Right? Wasn't it?
The slippers.
I remember that we would go up to the top deck to smoke cigarettes, remember? Like, secretly.
Mm-hmm.
And we would also we would come back down, and you had to like come down these stairs, and there was a long hallway with like all the different like rooms, and when it was like particularly rough, we would try to sprint down the hallway as fast as we could, and then it would like hit a wave or something, and we would like totally like hit the wall or whatever. We thought it was the funniest thing, and we would just take turns like sprinting up and down that hallway. Were we even drinking at that point, or were we just like,
I don't think so. And I think as a disclaimer, another disclaimer, I think it was only me and you who were the troublemakers who were
No, I remember doing it with you too. Because there was like a wind tunnel you would hit on the top deck too, and we thought that was hilarious.
Yeah. I not remember the nightclub. I used to go dancing in the nightclub. Every night.
That's right.
They had this amazing nightclub, and if you had a parent, you could be signed in, or I don't know how everyone else got in.
Yeah,
you did.
I can like distinctively remember, like I can visualize it in my head what it looked like.
Oh yeah, it had lights and it was so much fun, and we all just danced every single night, and it was like what we looked forward to because it was just like spring break, you know, and
like for full like disclosure, our parents had to sign a permission slip saying whether or not we could drink on the trip, like with dinner and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure all of our parents signed the permission slip.
They did.
Like it's an experience.
We're all good. We were all good kids. We weren't troublemakers. We all came from families who trusted us.
Yeah,
And
it's like the full experience in Europe. It's like if you can see over the bar, they will serve you. Like,
yeah.
they're it's not as taboo as it is here. There's not as many restrictions, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, this has been really nice, like connecting with other adults, semi face to face. I can't believe it's been 13 years.
I can't either. When you said that, I was shocked.
distraction from what's going on in the world. There's definitely a lot going on. Let's thank our healthcare providers and the doctors and everyone that are trying to,
Absolutely. All the essential workers.
yeah. Absolutely.
It's a weird time, you guys. Even weirder than a cruise ship sinking. But
I feel like we all need to end on an OPA so you can end the video.
Wait, are we going to take a shot?
Pretty. Is that for my birthday?
birthday.
Should we do like count of 3?
Okay.
Oh, I can do a really cheesy toast since everyone loves my cheesy
Oh
toast.
yes, those are the best.
Okay.
For old time's sake, everyone loves a good cheesy toast from Emily. Obviously, it was a crazy time, but I really couldn't have imagined doing it with anyone else. You guys kept me sane. You kept me happy. You kept me smiling. You kept me crying, that's for sure. And I would honestly sink on a cruise ship again if I could have the friendship with you guys that I have, because I love you all like sisters, and I'm so thankful for all of you. So should we say OPA on 3?
Yes.
All right. 1, 2, 3. OPA! I'm proud of you girls with shots. Ooh. All right. Love you girls.
Love you. Love you all. Thank you all.
Bye.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary!
Safe and stay healthy, everyone.
Mwah.
You too. Bye.